are listening to Climatic Scale, a podcast about what it really takes to scale climate solutions. My name is Aneri Pradhan, host and co-founder of Climatic Group. Today, we're talking about scaling digital energy solutions in the mobility sector and finding market success through a B2B2C model. I'm joined by Braden Holmes, VP of Partnerships from Gridio, a company working at the intersection of energy flexibility, EV charging, and grid optimization. Gridio is also a finalist of this year's SCT Award, Startup Energy Transition, and was in the top 15 out of 4,500 submissions.
Boom.
So definitely a company to watch. Welcome, Braden.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. So for listeners who are new to Gridio, what is the problem you're solving?
We're solving the problem of that by 2032, there's going to be 80 million EVs in Europe. And the biggest problem with that is that even in the current standards is right now, EVs account for about 10% of the peak load. So people get home at 6 or 7, they plug in their car, and then usually utilities will have to turn on a gas fire plant, which costs usually $1 billion to build and $150 million to maintain. So if we're having this issue now in 2032, it's going to account for about 50% of the peak load, which is not sustainable. It's basically adding 3 Germanys as a whole onto the market all at once. Currently, there's no real solution to that problem other than just building another 150 gas fire plants, which is really not good for the environment. So what we're trying to do is basically turn every single electric vehicle, which is basically just a battery sitting in someone's driveway or in their garage, into a flexibility asset so that the user can not only save up to 50% of their charging costs, but the utility is able to use that asset as a flexibility device and turn on and off hundreds of thousands of EVs and saving the environment as well as making them money. The biggest impact you can make is not only one that benefits the climate, but realistically, it has to make money. So that's what we're trying to accomplish, is to turn every EV into a flexibility asset and save people money.
Yeah, okay, you explained that problem so clearly, and that was amazing. And you mentioned the 3 Germanys, which is a very visual for me. How do you see this becoming even more urgent as electrification accelerates?
Well, it's electrification. You can see that the gas prices are just skyrocketing. So people are more likely going to go towards electric vehicles and electrification in general. It just puts a lot of strain on the grid. And we've also seen rolling brownouts in Spain and other issues. And they've done assessments of the European grid and saying that it's in desperate need of a massive upgrade. Sadly, you can actually look at China and they're killing it. If you look at their infrastructure, they are decades ahead of us. They have no issues with energy. We're having a big issue with the utility companies and the car companies working together, and that's what my job has been mostly about.
How does Gridio's platform work in practice?
So in practice, we got the B2C app. That's where we started. It was basically proof of concept to showcase that people actually want this and to build a user-friendly application. So people could connect their cars to the application. It costs about $379 per month, and then the users save anywhere from 15 to 20 euro per month. And all they have to do is connect their vehicle and then set what time they need their car charged by in the morning usually. And if they have solar inverters, they can automatically add them, and then that saves them more money. Basically, they can start charging their car for as little as 1 kilowatt of energy, which is quite good, so they can maximize the savings. So that's our B2C model. That was the proof of concept to make it sure that it can actually work and people want it. So we have about 30,000 users on that. And now we're going to where the biggest value is to the utility, because yes, it's great that we can save the customer money, but if we can't integrate this into the whole system to basically stabilize the grid, it doesn't really matter. So that's why now the B2B model that we're doing is offering this as a white label option to go into the utility. And we can do that with a pilot to begin with, because it is hard to sell a full package to the utility company, as they usually go for public tenders. So we start with a pilot, usually lasts about 3 months, and then they can do month to month after until they want to do a tender. Or if they're a private company, they can just pull the trigger on a full solution. So that one, we're trying to make it so that it's free for the user. We charge on the B2C app the $379, but on the B2B, because it benefits the utility a lot, like with Total Energies is one of our biggest customers now that is now scaling in France and Spain. They offer it free. They just have a custom tariff for electric vehicles, and it's through our Smart Charge Plus app. And yeah, the customer just plugs in their car, connects, and off they go. And actually a really good thing, why Gridio was selected this year for the SCT Awards and stuff is we did what a lot of companies thought was impossible, which is dealing with the car manufacturers. If everyone knows that industry, they understand certain car manufacturers are very difficult to deal with. And that's where Gridio kind of fits in the picture. So in the last year, we've basically negotiated and closed about 80% of the EV brands, including like Volkswagen Group, Mercedes-Benz, BMW Group, Kia, Tesla, and we're working on a few more others. So we basically have 80% coverage. And that's been a big part because no one else in the industry has, like our competitors signed with BMW Group because they shut off and sent cease and desist orders to the other companies, which has definitely helped us to prop us up. And that's also why we won a couple tenders, because we're future-proof for the fact that we're working with these companies. Because at first, these companies were like, oh yeah, we have a working API. And then we connect to it and we're like, this is not working. And then we're like, oh, okay, so now that we're co-developing, but we're partners, it's been a really interesting experience to understand how far behind these car companies are, but it's not really their fault. Tesla, obviously, they're a tech company, so they were miles ahead and they charge per data instead of a fixed price. So they're very easy to deal with. But the other companies, it helped us because then we're able to have an in-depth relationship now with them where we help them. They see us as an asset. And then it's going to really help us push into the rest of the utilities with that kind of relationships. Because the utility and the OEMs, it's very hard for them to work together.
That's really interesting. So you touched on this already. You started with the B2C model to reach users, and then you started with this utility partnerships. And at what point, though, in your journey did you realize you would need to get utilities and electric car makers involved to reach users?
My CEO, Conrad, he knew that the utilities were definitely the end goal. But I joined him a year ago, and I actually didn't know. I didn't realize that Gridio, as well as the competitors, were actually basically hacking into the electric vehicles to connect to them. So I saw that as a giant risk because you can't scale a solution that's supposed to, create such a big impact on the grid on a hacked version. So with that in mind, we decided instead of fully targeting the B2B, which is basically the utilities, we decided to take the first, what we thought was going to take only a couple months, ended up taking almost a year, but my CEO is very happy we went in that direction just because once BMW started shutting off, now Volkswagen is shutting off. So we would have been in a very bad position now because in the beginning, we're competing with eNote and Jedlix and all these other companies that have a lot more money and influence. But because we took this path, now we're ahead of the game. So it puts us in a really good advantage. But it's been quite difficult.
Yeah, nice. And I imagine the sales cycles is quite long. How did you validate that utilities or partners would actually pay for the solution?
Well, we could justify it based off of the countries right now that we have our B2C app live in, that we have the most users, our spot market pricing, where the electricity prices changes every hour. And now that's going to 15 minutes in some countries. So if we have 30,000 users that are willing to pay $379 per month, it just shows, and we can also track all the savings and see how they're behaving. We use that data to then approach the utility company and say, this is something not only do your customers want, it'll save them money, but they're willing to pay for it. So if you offer it as a full package for free, then it benefits them the most. But to be honest, the utility companies, the sales cycles are so long. And the sad part is these companies are so big. They're trying to be tech companies. They're trying to build in-house, but they build very glitchy stuff. And the user experiences aren't that good. There are some utilities that do it well, but it's hard to convince them to go with startups because they're always trying to de-risk so much. And it's probably not even just my company. It's probably most startups in the energy sector are dealing with this, is that they have an amazing solution, but the utility would rather spend 10 times more de-risking a pilot than actually just pulling the trigger on a pilot.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Because I talked to one company for 8 months and it was for a $10,000 a euro pilot.
Oh my gosh.
And there's a team of 8 people just cracking away at this thing. We're having weekly calls and stuff. And you're like, do they not have a basic account? So it's frustrating, but they're now starting to see it. We've been live with this partnerships with the OEMs. Now they're starting to see the amount of de-risking we've done for a future-proof solution. So all of this last 12 months of work are starting to pay off. We're now seeing the people are coming back to us and be like, okay, we tried it and I think we're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's so interesting you said that because we're both North Americans working in Europe. And I think we do see this risk averse culture just really strongly shaped by
Yeah.
the European utility and corporate landscape. Or is there even any part of Europe where you'd say it's a little bit more fast moving? Because I know you're pan Europe, right?
Yeah, I'm originally from Canada. I'm just trying to think on which countries. I think Sweden's pretty quick.
Makes sense.
Estonia's quite quick because it's so small, but it's also on the double-edged sword that it's not worth the market going after because the scaling can only go so much. But it moves really quickly because it's a digital society. But Germany's definitely the slowest. The Germans are very efficient. But yeah, I'm just trying to think of any. The French were really quick too, like ironically. But
So speaking of scaling, what has been the single biggest challenge in scaling Gridio so far?
yeah, I think it's definitely the utilities perception on technology and de-risking. It's like a combination of both of those that I talked about. It's seeing us as a startup is one thing, but them deciding to build in-house or not.
Yeah.
And like even with all this mobility stuff we're talking about, like pun intended, is stay in your lane. If you get these like utility companies, they're like 50 to 100 years old. And then we're going to build an app. It doesn't work.
Right.
I talked to large utilities and stuff, and they believe that if they just hire enough people and throw money at it, that they're going to build something great. But then usually the management team is running how they build it. And it's kind of like in the movie industry when, let's say if you get a good script, but then the producers are involved. And then they're like, oh, it should have this, it should have this. And then the next thing you know, it's a horrible movie. So I think that's the same thing the large companies have. Because I talked to one large company, I can't say names. They have 120 developers, 24 project managers.
Wow.
And they built an app that has a 2.1 star rating.
Oh, no.
And it's just like constant comments. And I had a meeting with them and I put up our app that has a 4.7 star rating. And then theirs, I'm like, why is it that our team of 11 built something better than your team? And then really it's about the customer experience. And I think that's where startups will always beat these large companies.
Yeah.
There's too many cooks in the kitchen with these large companies. Everyone's got say, or even if they don't even want to take the risk. This is another thing I see is that we'll spend 6 months in deliberation and we have to get this stakeholder, this stakeholder, this stakeholder, everyone involved because nobody wants to stick their neck out and say, we should do this. I will be responsible for this project. They want everyone else to do it. Like, everyone else put up their hand. Oh yeah, we're all good? Okay, cool. And then they have to get everyone else to sign off on it. So yeah, I think it's just a accountability thing. And also the fact that a lot of utilities are partly owned by the government. That also is a huge factor of why it's slow.
Yeah.
Bureaucracy.
There's also some really cool quotes in there that I think will be good for marketing this episode. And I'm curious too, because you mentioned the public aspect, the procurement timelines, them wanting to try to do it themselves. Has there also been integration complexities though? Maybe that's also why the utilities are preferring to build internally?
Not really. That's the thing. It's like most startups, if they're really lean and they built from the ground up, especially in the last few years, the APIs are really good. It does offer more complexities on their side. But if you're going to integrate with something that's old and a lot of stuff isn't updated, I think it's more of a challenge to build in-house and try to make that work because you're basically making something that doesn't really work for something else that shouldn't really work. And you should update both, but they don't. So yeah, I could probably make the argument on both sides. It's really difficult in some cases, but on other cases, it's not a problem at all because we've had only a few API integrations because we went to full tender in one with Enivus in Luxembourg. We're going to be doing full integration. They've been great team meetings and stuff. And then the rest have mostly been the white labeled apps. But yeah, I think it would be a case by case thing.
And how long does a typical sales cycle procurement process look like in your experience?
Yeah, it's around 12 to 24 months. And it depends on what it is. Because I've had conversations going with just to get a pilot going for a long time with a lot of utilities. One utility, when I first started, I talked to and I convinced them that they need to have a smart charging program for electric vehicles. So then they shopped around, they picked another vendor that had this other company that did the connections, which wasn't really smart charging. And so then they finally came back to me a month ago and said, oh, everything you told us was right. And we should have done it that way. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But then we're still in deliberation. So it basically gets to the point of even if they make a decision like this is the direction we want to go in, then it usually gets stalled for up to 6 months in what they call as internal deliberation or strategic planning for the roadmap of how this fits into that. Because utilities are usually planning 2 years ahead, what's on their roadmap. And if it doesn't fit that, then it's really hard to justify to get that put in there. So I think that's the challenge in their internal operations. But once they make the decision, then it just goes ahead because it's already been decided. It's just a matter of who's going to do it. And then the tender process is a whole other ballgame.
So you mentioned already you have a partnership with Total Energies. You can continue with them, or you could share another example of a successful deployment or partnership that helped momentum.
Yeah, I think Total has been a really good one because we started with an accelerated program with them. And then we built the white label app called Smart Charge Plus. Then we rolled it out. And it was actually interesting because I'll be vague about this because I'm not sure how much I can talk about it, but that it was scaling slowly. And then we figured out it's because their marketing department wasn't actually sending the offer to their own customers.
Huh.
So then we tested basically sending out the offer ourselves and then marketing. And and then it took off from there. Now it's really scaling quickly. But again, it's just about the bureaucracy about how the utilities work, because logically you would say, would it be best for them to scale their own program that then unlocks flexibility because they have X amount of EVs out there? And you would think that I want to get all of those on this program because then it saves us money and we can then turn this into flexibility revenue. But sadly, that's not how it works when there's multiple departments with different agendas and a lot of bureaucracy. But it's scaling now. We got a winning solution and how to get there, which is now we're applying on when we talk to new utilities, and that's actually helping the discussions a lot more. What we learned from dealing with that project. So when we do pilots, we say, okay, this is the way your marketing should look. This is the way that you should send this offer out to get as many customers on board with this EV program. So yeah, I think the Total Energies taught us a lot. So what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And that's also about managing expectations too. We also learned the fact that sending the most basic contract for the pilot to the utility as soon as possible to get it to their legal, because the legal department is the biggest slowdown. Even if everyone says yes, and it could be stuck in legal for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Because they want to de-risk it. So I've literally just said, here's our standard contract. Just change whatever you want, because we're literally just going to do it 3 months. So whatever you need to do, put it in there. We'll sign it as long as the prices stay the same, and we can do month to month after that. Let's just get this thing going, because that's our main thing, is just to show the utility the value. It works. It can be scaled. Then they see that, okay, this is a winning option.
Yeah, that's a great nugget of wisdom you just shared, just like getting buy-in from the legal pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah. The legal is hard in utilities.
Yeah. So, and then you mentioned about going from pilot and then scaling it. Can you share an example of where you moved from a pilot to a broader implementation?
Yeah, so we did that with one utility that we're right on the very end of winning the tender. So I can't say the which utility, but we did the pilot. They put us against another competitor, and they saw that the way that we were running things when it comes to the customer experience, the connections to the cars, how they would respond to being controlled. Because if you hack the EVs, it's not as reliable. So you can send a command to start charging, and it just won't, because you're basically hacked into it. But with the official APIs that we've also helped build, it depends on the brand, because Teslas can respond within seconds, while you get Volkswagen Group cars can take anywhere from up to 3 to 5 minutes to respond. And that also then affects when we go to flexibility. If we say, okay, we need 10 megawatts of energy for flexibility, then we have to go down the list automatically. That we have to basically factor in the different brands and when they'll respond. But with that pilot, then they took all of the learnings from that, and they saw how much official partners were. Then they put the tender out. They basically wrote it for us because no one else could basically qualify for it. So they just said official partners, this is what needs to happen. And then that became a full rollout. So now we have a 5-year contract with them. So we're hoping, because if this scales, it's basically all we have to do is get the first 30 on board with one utility, and we've eliminated a gas fire plant.
Wow.
And then once that case study can be printed, because like we've done it in mock with our B2C app because we have enough cars to simulate flexibility, but once it's in a utility and connected with a trading group, and they actually say, oh, wow, like this saves us so much money. Now we have another revenue source for flexibility with our trading team. So once that case study is built, that will be our standing point to then just go to all the other utilities and be like, look, this is really easy. Because even though they plan long-term, a lot of the time they're like looking at this as, oh, this will cost us X. How much is this going to cost us till it's built? Because we always say you have to get to at least 5,000 EVs for it to be a profitable project. but they just see the immediate cost to get there, which is also the other problem is the electric vehicle brands. To get these official partnerships, I had to negotiate the deals of my life. And we still have to pay them per month. And that's something that we're constantly negotiating to get down, to understand that the more they drop the price, the more volume we can get, the more that they can make money, and the more that everyone can make money. So the EV brands are definitely one of the biggest barriers on turning EVs into flexibility assets.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're getting there though. They're starting to understand. I think some consultants were hired that told them that their data is worth billions and billions, but they're definitely coming back to the ground.
So then what characteristics would make an ideal partner for Gridio?
When it comes to utility or the...
Both utility and auto.
I'll take the EV side first. Tesla's a great partner because they've offered up the API. We connect. It's very easy, and they charge for efficient data, meaning that BMW Group is a good example. They charge for a fixed fee per month. We have to pay them X amount per month, and we get access to the data. We can ask for a whole bunch of whatever. But at Tesla, we get charged per push-pull data point, meaning that if we send commands and stuff, they just charge us for each thing. So we can actually get our code and the algorithms so efficient that we get that price point super low. And that actually is better because it's less data being transferred, which means less server, which means less power constraints. So it actually is better to have more efficient and charge per data points because it's just better for the environment, because it's like the same thing when you have a Bitcoin miner going. It's a massive draw. So if you use less data, that's just less energy being used. So they save more money because there's not a constant request going in, and we make efficient code. And then it forces all the other companies that if they don't make their product efficient when it comes to the data points, then they're just going to spend a lot of money. So it's a win-win. And I've been pitching that to all the other EV companies that they need to switch to that platform because it's a win-win across the board.
So let's talk about your next 12 to 24 months. Time is money for startups. So what's your main priorities?
Right now, because I need to sign the last few OEMs for the electric vehicle brands, and then it's a full push now for B2B and tenders. The utilities are waking up. They've done their tests. They've tried making products, and they're starting to see what works and what doesn't. So I think getting 10 utilities in the next 12 to 24 months is my goal, from pilot to scale. And then we'll probably have another 5 to 10 tenders on top of that. So we're looking to get that going. And then hopefully in the next 24 months, we'll be able to get at least 5 of the companies up to 30,000 vehicles, which then we just eliminated 5 fire gas plants. And then that's where we can start the real mission of just shutting them all off and just turning every electric vehicle into a battery that's in your driveway. And then eventually we get in, because we have the official partnerships, we can benefit the customer even more, where we get all the access to the biodirectional pilots, the V2G pilots, all these things that basically start making the customer money. Where in a lot of countries now they're looking at eventually that you can charge your car for free, because you can suck up the energy only when it's at the most, it's being produced the most and needs to go somewhere. And then you're able to then put it back into the grid, or use your own car as your home battery that powers your entire house. So the sky's the limit with this. It's just a matter of if the parties can get involved. And that's also where Gridio's biggest value is we're the bridge between the two giants that don't really work together well. So we're basically creating these relationships and making this whole mess work. And it's good. I think we're in a really good position. So it's going to be a very bumpy 12 to 24 months, but funding wise, we're basically set because we had to do that to get the tenders. But we're going to go for our next round, probably at the Q3 this year. I want to build up the commercial team to start because I'm the first commercial hire, so I've been like really testing all these different ways to do things. But we need someone in each country that speaks the language, that understands the industry, that is able to hit the ground and talk with these utilities in their own language with experience. Because I've only been in the industry for a year. They basically got me in as a hired gun, because that's my skill set, is to have a fresh look at things and see where we go.
Yeah. And so for our listeners, what types of customers, markets, or collaborations are you actively seeking?
To be honest, really, we looked at different like auto clubs and things like that, but it didn't seem to work. We tried to go with the dealers to see if they could offer Gridio to their customers. But anyone that's looking, I guess, that's in their country We can also look at like when it comes to consultation, if they want to do some work when it comes to getting in contact with the utilities, because that's our biggest barrier. Is I've spent a lot of time doing reach outs, and I'm having success, but we're a team of 2 on the commercial team, so there's only so many connections we can make. The best ones I do make are at the conferences. But yeah, anyone that would like to help out or build some value when it comes to the contacts with the utilities and getting us in the door, we definitely set the winning standard if we get a pilot going. It's just a matter of opening up that door to get them to listen and to look at our data to show that it's got value for them.
Nice. And you already shared a lot of nuggets of wisdom here, but since we do have a lot of founders listening, what's one piece of advice would you share for climate tech founders trying to scale through partnerships?
It depends on what kind of partnerships they're going for.
In your use case.
You definitely hit the stakeholders. You're going to have to figure out who they are. And it always comes down to, can you create a champion in that company? Can you create a diehard guy that gets your vision, that understands and sees the value of it for his company, and that he's willing to stick his neck out for you? If you don't have that guy, it is super hard, because then you're trying to convince a group of people that they have every reason not to do it. But if you have somebody in there, it's like having a Trojan horse in the company that is on your side, that is cheerleading and spreading your message and getting the right people involved and setting up the meeting. So yeah, I think that's my biggest piece of advice is create your champion, and that champion it has to be someone that is willing to fight for you inside that company. Yeah. And that's when you get a lot of stuff done.
Nice.
And you can get past legal a lot faster, because it can go down to the legal office and be like, what's going on here? So you basically have a little spy. You just have to create that relationship. And to create that relationship, you have to really put some time in. You have to understand how it can benefit him. Because if he champions it and then it goes through, or her, him or her, anyone, but whoever that champion is, they have to see how it benefits them after this. If they get this project up and going, then it's their baby. So that you have to sell them on the vision, and then it has to benefit them in the end. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Find your champion. That's such a good piece of advice. So thank you so much, Braden.
My pleasure.
This conversation really shows that it's crucial for solutions like yours to learn how to navigate complex energy ecosystems, build trust with customers, and prove value step by step. Thanks to our listeners for tuning into Climatic Scale. You can find our other episodes on climaticgroup.substack.com, our website, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thanks again.